This is going to be a long video. Hi loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time if you are new here. My name is Lori Beth and today I have a very exciting video. I'm really pumped to discuss all these books with you. They are my best reads of 2023 and I am going to do my best to keep this kind of compact and concise because I had a very hard time narrowing this list down. It's quite an extensive list, so I'm gonna kind of try to keep moving through all of them and not linger for too long. Some of them are actually part of either a series or a duology, so I will kind of lump them together. And then some I'm going to just kind of mention and not go too deeply into because I don't want to give any spoilers. Keep in mind that this is not going to be in any particular order, meaning I didn't necessarily read these in the order that I'm going to talk about them. I'm just going to kind of grab them and start talking. All of these were just read in 2023 in general. First book right off the bat, it was actually the first book I read in 2023, was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries, and it was such a lovely fairy tale whimsical book. So we actually follow the main character named Emily Wilde, who is studying fairies or fair folk, and she goes to the north to study one of the most elusive types of fairies that there's not a lot of research done on. She gets up there, she is joined by her arch nemesis, her rival, if you will, Wendell Brambleby, which I'm sorry is one of the best character names that I have heard in a long time. And he is exactly what you think he might be based on that name. He is kind of cocky and very well put together and a little refined. And Emily is the complete opposite of that. She's very introverted and kind of withdrawn from people, has a hard time making friends. So he is there to kind of help her do this research on the fairies and remind her that if she wants to learn about the area she's living in, she might have to get in really well with the townsfolk, and he, because of his personality, can help her do that. It was such a great read, especially to start the year off with. It was very cozy, very light, and it was fun to kind of watch Emily and Wendell bounce off of each other and kind of start to develop this relationship. As the story unfolds, you learn a little bit more about Wendell and maybe why he is so good at helping her research these fairies. Next, The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is book 2 in a 3-book series. I did also read the first book in 2023 as well, and I do plan on reading the last book in the series in 2024. It's actually high up on my TBR because this story just stole my heart. So the story follows Evangeline Fox, and in this world that she lives in, there are fates. The Prince of Hearts, Jax being one of them. She, in the first book, makes a deal with Jax to stop the wedding of her one true love, and in return, she owes him 3 kisses at the time of his place in choosing. Of course, this usually goes awry because making a deal with a fate never ends well. So we follow Evangeline through the first book, all the way into the second book, where her and Jax are kind of on this adventure to stop the curse that surrounds this world that they live in. If you have not read a Stephanie Garber book, I highly recommend. Her writing is whimsical, fairy tale type narrative, and it's very easy to just get lost in her stories. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and this is a dark academia novel. So this book opens with our main character, Oliver, who has just been released from prison after 10 years. Oliver had attended this performance art school where he and a group of his close friends specifically studied Shakespeare, his plays, the theory behind it, Shakespeare as a person, and it was a really kind of that perfect academia setting where these students really get so involved in what they're studying that they start to blend the lines of what's real and what is just something that they are learning. The story goes into what happens and what leads them to a big tragedy and whether or not Oliver should have been put in prison for this said tragedy. The way the book is written was really kind of cool. It's written out as a play, so it's broken into different scenes and different acts, and there's a lot of Shakespearean lingo in here, which seemed kind of overwhelming, I will admit, in the first few chapters, but then you get really sucked into it, and I think it kind of helps draw you into this world that the students themselves can't really seem to break apart from reality. Next is actually a duology. So this is the Shepherd King duology, or One Dark Window, and Two Twisted Crowns. I'm going to read a snippet from the back because I think it's going to actually explain it better than I can just from memory. Gripped by a tyrant king and in the thrall of dark magic, the kingdom is in peril. Elspeth and Raven have gathered most of the 12 Providence cards, but the last and most important one remains to be found, the Twin Elders. If they're going to find the card before solstice and set free the kingdom, they will need to journey through dangerous, mist-cloaked forests. The only one who can lead them through is the monster that shares Elspeth's head, the Nightmare. This was so brilliant and atmospheric, and I have to admit, I don't think I've seen a magic system like this either in a long time or maybe ever. The idea that magic was contained within cards, so like anybody that got a hold of one of these cards could actually use magic, I thought was super cool. And Rachel Gillig's writing really sucks you into a story. It was a page turner for sure. 2 books, in my opinion, was perfectly paced. Sometimes, like, I love a fantasy series. I love trilogies and series that are much, much longer, but there's something about a duology. When they are done right, they are the perfect amount of books. Ooh, this book was spicy and in so many good ways. Holy moly, if you have never read a book by S.T. Gibson before, she is just such a poetic author. She really kind of pulls you into this story. Like it's very emotional. And this book is written as a diary or letters from a bride of Dracula. She never actually says his name is Dracula in the book, but we kind of just assume that maybe that's who he is. And it opens up with her saying, "This is my last letter to you," or more so a confession, which in my opinion, like words like that are immediately going to draw me into a story every single time. The book, even though it's not very long, was actually quite heavy. So I will say this is a very, very adult book because it has so many undertones of like mental and physical abuse, depression. You're following a family of vampires, so they are immortal and they're going through centuries, seeing things like famine and war and plagues, and it is all just so interesting to watch human nature over centuries of time. And the book ends in a little bit of a tragedy, but also kind of this freeing sense for the characters. And I couldn't put it down. I absolutely devoured this book. She has a few more books coming out this year. I'm going to actually pre-order one this week. So if you can get your hands on a St. Gibson book, do it immediately. And moving on to, in my opinion, a new fantasy series that is going to be above and beyond. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. So this was actually a decently sized fantasy book, and I read it just right towards the end of the year. I had seen it starting to blow up on Instagram, and I passed it a few times at Barnes & Noble, and then finally when I was doing some of my Christmas shopping, of course I stopped back into Barnes & Noble, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna grab it. I think I'd like to pick back up another fantasy book and get lost in another world, and this absolutely did it for me. So this story was really interesting. It follows a main character named Peyton, and in the world that Peyton lives in, there are people that have magic. Some are mundane, so they have lower levels of magic, and then there are elites, people that have very high-powered magic. Then there are the ordinaries, the powerless people. But Peyton is a powerless or an ordinary, as you might have guessed, and she lives her entire life hiding that fact from the people around her. Her father, from the time she's young, has taught her how to fend for herself, and as she grows up and gets older, she ends up actually saving the life of one of the princes. The world that they live in has a set of trials that people with powers or magic will go to and fight for the title of the most elite person. After she saves this prince, she draws attention to herself, and the people of the slums where she lives enters her into this competition, and she's freaking out, first of all, because she doesn't actually have power. Secondly, because she's tried to stay out of the spotlight her whole life so that nobody around her realizes what she is. I thought it was a very well-paced fantasy series. There was a lot of world building that happened. The tension between Peyton, the main character, and Kai, the prince that she ends up saving, just starts to build and build over time. And it ends way different than I thought it would for a first book. So not so much a cliffhanger, but I'm really excited to see where the story goes and where the characters are going to go as well. So next we have Slewfoot by Brahm. This author absolutely stole my heart. I know I said I had a hard time picking books throughout the year to like place in a top 5 or a top 10, but I think this is top 5 for sure. If you told me right now,
Lori Beth, pick one out of that pile, top 5, which one would it be?
Slewfoot would be in there. So I'm going to read you the description from the back because I think it summarizes the book pretty well, better than I could do myself. Set in colonial New England, Slewfoot is a tale of magic and mystery, of triumph and terror, and from acclaimed author and artist Bram. An ancient spirit awakens in a dark wood. The wild folk call him Father, Slayer, Protector. The colonists call him Slewfoot, Demon, or Devil. To Abatha, a recently widowed outcast, alone and vulnerable in her pious village, he is the only one she can turn to for help. Together they ignite a battle between pagan and Puritan, one that threatens to destroy the entire village, leaving nothing but ashes and bloodshed in its wake. So as the back of the book described, this is set in Puritan New England. I think it was like 1600s or something like that. Abatha was pushed into marriage by her family and immigrated from England to the United States, and the setting was so perfect for Halloween, spooky season, fall type vibes, which is exactly when I read this. But it is not just a book about bewitchery or witchcraft. It is a book about a woman who is so ahead of her time. Abatha is so strong-willed and so determined to fight for what is hers. It is just inspirational. And she kind of befriends this spirit from the woods, and their relationship together, they start to realize that they both can be exactly what they want to be. It was very charming, very heartwarming, but also just so badass. Like, this girl, one of my top FMCs I think I've ever read. And not only that, this book is stunning. So Bram is not just an author, he is also an artist. So he illustrates his books. And can you see that? I would, in the middle of reading this book, sometimes I would just flip back through to the pages because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is so uber talented. So if you are looking for a book that is still, yes, about witchcraft and a Puritan versus pagan setting and has a BA FMC, pick up Slewfoot. You won't regret it. And moving into Tower of Dawn. I'm not going to say a lot. And yes, I know you're probably thinking, wow, Lori Beth, are you really only just now reading Throne of Glass? Yes, I am. Okay. So of course, I love Sarah J. Maas. I am just one of those fantasy girlies. I always have been, always will be. I flew through ACOTAR so quickly that I almost regretted it because I can never go back and read those books for the first time again. So I have been taking my sweet, sweet time with Throne of Glass. I've been weaving books in between each one. But I will say, so far out of the series, Tower of Dawn did something to me. It just gave me so much redemption and so much love that it made me beyond excited to pick up the last book and just see how everything kind of melded together. I'm not going to say much more. I just think that this is one of my favorites and I wanted to take time to point it out. I'm also just going to say Kayal, Irene, and that's it. I'm going to end it there. I would like to introduce you to my entire personality. If you have never read a Leigh Bardugo book, you don't know what you are missing out on. This woman is so smart and so quick-witted, and her characters end up being so raw that you can't help but love them, even if you're not sure if you want to love them. So with that being said, most of her characters are kind of that morally gray type vibe where you're like, are they good? Are they bad? I don't really know, but I really like them either way. So this is a 3-book series. Only 2 are out. I did read both of these in 2023, and I cannot wait for the 3rd one to come out because of the way that the 2nd book ended. And I will say, with a series, as most of us have experienced, when you're going through a series, you're like, these were kind of my favorites, or book 1 was the best, or book 3 really landed, but the first 2 were meh. Both of these were so equally as good that I couldn't even believe it. If you are not aware, this book follows Galaxy Alex Stern. Alex dropped out of school early and into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bedside, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs are the well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players, but their occult activities are more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. This gave me everything I have ever wanted in a book. A dark academia setting, paranormal activity, fantasy, morally gray characters, and magical realism. I think that's what really draws this all together. Because this is set at Yale University, the entire time you're reading it, you almost lose sight of what's real and what's not. And those are my favorite types of book. I love an urban fantasy or that magical realism that kind of starts to blend the lines of reality and fiction. Not only that, again, Leigh Bardugo's writing is just so smart. And if you haven't picked up her books yet, I highly, highly recommend. These are more of her adult side books and that dark academia setting, which of course I'm completely obsessed with, but a great series to get your hands on. Oh, what do we have here, Lori? Another dark academia book?
Weird.
This book was just so haunting. I think that's a perfect way to describe it. And yet again, another very atmospheric book, and with a very strong female character. So this follows the story of Effie, a young girl who is in an architecture program at her college because it is one of the few that she could be admitted to as a woman. She loves writing and would have preferred to be in the literature college, except they don't accept women at the time. With that being said, one of her favorite authors, who has since passed away and has written one of her favorite stories, his surviving family members have put on this competition for any architects to submit designs to help revamp his estate. Effie, of course, takes the chance at entering, submits her ideas, and actually is chosen. So she gets to go stay at the estate of this author that she has absolutely adored her whole life. But when she gets there, she realizes that she's going to be joined by another student from the literature college that she wishes she could be a part of, named Preston. And as Effie loves the history of this author and the story, Preston is the opposite. He is there to kind of research whether or not this author really was who he says he was. So as the story unfolds, you start to see that maybe Preston is onto something, and Effie's eyes are kind of open to what this author truly was. Lots of creepy things start happening in this house. The house itself is kind of dilapidated. It's on a cliffside somewhere along the sea, and everything just, as you're flipping through, you can almost smell the sea salt coming off of the pages. Whenever an author can actually make me feel like I'm there, I am turning the pages as quickly as possible, and the story is almost ending too fast for me. This is a dark academia book. However, it does lean a little more YA. So I would say if you or anyone you know are just trying to step into dark academia and you don't know if you're going to like some of the seriousness or the heaviness of it, this is a really good option for you. Or if maybe you have a younger person in your life that really enjoys kind of like a dark, moody atmosphere, this would be a really good option. Next, we have Morgan Is My Name by Sophie Keach. So this is a feminist retelling of Morgan Le Fay, and this is in an Arthurian setting. So we are talking castles, King Arthur, Merlin. Do I need to say more? And besides that, it is from a feminist point of view, which I absolutely love. Previous to this book, I have never enjoyed a retelling. In fact, I have DNF'd multiple popular retellings, which I will not name in this video because I'm not ready for the hate quite yet. This is just such good literature. So from the back here, it actually says, a powerful feminist retelling of the early life of Morgan Le Fay, the famed villainess of Arthurian legend. This dazzling debut is the story of a woman both mortal and magical, formidable and misunderstood, told in her own words. So it's just a really quick synopsis, but basically Morgan is one super strong woman who is, again, ahead of her time. So she lives in this world where women are still expected to marry into certain types of families, but she does not just want to do that. She wants to do so much more with her life. And when she does do stuff like that, she wants to have a voice in everything that happens. This was such a good blend of magic and storytelling, but above all, just a woman who knew what was right and was not scared to voice her opinion and then face the challenges that came with that. A book that took me completely by surprise in 2023 was The Unmaking of June Farrow. So I had seen this book, again, I walked by it a few times in the bookstore and it sounded really good, but it just never really grabbed me. And then lo and behold, I received this copy in one of my subscription boxes. So can we talk about how gorgeous it is, by the way? You can see that. Like, look at the end papers in this book. Oh, the colors. But besides the fact that the book is absolutely gorgeous, the story is absolutely gorgeous itself. So I'll read you just a blurb so you can get an idea. It's been a year since June started seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Faint wind chimes, a voice calling her name, and a mysterious door appearing out of nowhere. Signs of what June has always known is coming. But June is determined to end the curse once and for all, even if she must sacrifice the hope of love and a family of her own. So as the book describes, there is a curse on this family, and June is so determined to try and end the curse for future generations of her family. It was really interesting to watch June kind of understand what was happening in these different timelines and with her family curse and what she was going to have to do to make it end for future generations. This is my first book by Adrienne Young. I thought her writing was absolutely lovely. It was so easy to read and I was flipping pages. At no point in time did I feel like this book lagged. Any author, in my opinion, that can interweave different timelines with characters and years and do it so seamlessly is just such an amazing author, in my opinion. And then we have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. So it has actually been a minute since I've read a book that surrounds just a place, or in this case, a house. And I forgot how much I truly enjoyed that setting. So not only are you falling in love with characters in a book, you're falling in love with a place. Like, you want to be in that place. You can see yourself being in this house. The story follows Opal, and Opal knows better than to mess with haunted houses or brooding men. But when an opportunity to work there arises, the money might get her brother out of Eden. Starling House is uncanny and full of secrets, just like Arthur, its heir. It also feels strangely, dangerously like something she's never had, a home. Sinister forces converge on Eden, and Opal realizes that if she wants a home, she'll have to fight for it. Even if it involves digging up her family's ugly past to achieve a better future, she'll have to go down deep, down beneath Starling House to claw her way back to the light. The characters in this book, the two main characters, Opal and Arthur, were so unique in my opinion because they are described as rough around the edges, almost kind of not very good looking. Arthur is tall and skinny with a crooked nose, and Opal is just kind of like this bulldog attitude type woman who doesn't care what people think, and she is a fighter. And I think that the premise of the book of fighting for something you want, whether that's your family or what's right or a home that you've never had before, just really stole my heart away. And these characters were so human and relatable that it made me just flip every page of this book. I couldn't read it fast enough. This was such a lovely story. Highly recommend. If you like more of a light fantasy, this is a perfect book for you. All right, you guys, we did it. That was my list of top reads from 2023. I know that was a big list, but I actually narrowed it down from my entire list of books that I completed throughout last year. These were just the standouts, the ones that I personally felt needed some extra attention, wanted to bring them to the forefront. I am beyond thrilled to get into my 2024 TBR. There's some series from this group of books that I get to continue. There's a whole list of authors that I'd like to try and read in 2024. As I've already said, 2024 is the year of literary fiction for me, so I can't wait to get my hands on more lit fic for the new year. With that being said, I'm always looking for recommendations. If you have recommendations for literary fiction books that you love, drop those below. Maybe even another fantasy series out there or dark academia book that I haven't read yet, please put that in a comment below. If you like this video, like and subscribe. Or if you want to follow me over on Instagram, my name is Lori Reads Things. I will pop that in the description box below as well. Or if you want to get to know me a little bit better, you can go back and watch my last video where I did more of an introduction using the booktube newbie tag questions. It's a little more in depth about me and why I started this channel and what I would like to bring to you guys and the entire community. I will link that down below as well. As always, I hope you guys are doing great. Thank you so much, loves, for joining me today. I can't wait to see you in the next one.